A friend of mine showed me a watercolor painting they did of a Golem character they designed. I liked it a lot and asked them for a model sheet so I could make it in Blender. This is a quick time lapse and explanation of my process. I'll be making multiple videos to archive the project. This isn't exactly a tutorial, but I'm always happy to answer questions. First, I imported all the images my friend sent me. This included multiple angles and highlighted line work for different parts of the model. I personally like to axis align my reference images. This makes it so the images are only visible from an exact orthographic camera angle. This way they don't get in the way when I want to rotate the camera to get better looks at the model. I also tend to lower the opacity of the images, and I try to make them align with one another to try and keep things consistent. For this video, I'll be doing a blockout. On models like these, I try to work from general to specific, so I'm just going to use simple primitives to block out the general shape of the character. I'm not going for precision, details, or clean topology during this phase. In future videos, I'm going to remesh the golem parts and reshape it using Blender's sculpting tools. Typically, people will model with mirror modifiers and symmetry enabled, but this character is pretty asymmetrical, and I think focusing symmetry would just ruin how dynamic its design is. You can see I'm mostly using simple cubes, adding loops in the geometry and nudging vertices to more closely match the shape. I'm mostly trying to mimic the silhouette of the design, but it's also important to check in other angles frequently to make sure the shape isn't getting messed up or distorted. Another important thing to note is that I'm keeping the mesh segmented in different parts. I'm doing this because it will be easier to sculpt, and it's tied to how the character will move. Since golems are made of rigid, non-deforming stones, it makes more sense to me to cut it into sections. The thighs and calves are split into two sections. This golem is designed with ball joints, so I just added spears for hip joints and spears for knees. Since both legs are fairly similar, I duplicated the right to the left and tweaked it from there to save time. I also did the same for the three toes as a base, adjusting their shape as necessary. You might notice in the drawing there's chunks that are cut out to make space for the toes. I intend to do this later using the sculpting tools. You could also cut out shapes with booleans, but I opted not to do that here so I could focus on getting the overall shape done first. The arms are a little more complicated than the legs, so I quickly did a grease pencil sketch over the art to give me an idea of the basic shape. I decided for the arms it made more sense to use cylinders as my base primitives. I also used more segments in the arms than I did in the legs. I just used basic cubes to represent the fingers. I used another spear for the elbow joint, and I did some tweaks just to deal with clipping and overlapping issues. I followed the same process for its huge left arm. There's a lot more emphasis on the left arm, not just in its size, it's also more detailed and distinct from the rest of the golem. I did throw in some overlapping primitives, but this shouldn't be too much of a problem because I'm just going to remesh, sculpt, and retopologize the model anyway. I tried to match the caps of the cylinders to the model sheet. When modeling the hand, I decided to use another cylinder to bool cut out a flat surface to make space for the thumb. Since I'm lazy, I just copied the fingers from the other arm and repositioned them appropriately. After finishing the blockout, I decided to throw in a basic 3-point lighting asset, and then I keyed a 360-degree turnaround camera to do a quick play blast of the model. I also found myself doing minor tweaks and fixes to the toes, and I moved some of the larger shapes around a bit. I also sorted the arms into their own collection, and I planned on doing this for the rest of the parts too, but I didn't want to get too caught up on small details quite yet. The overall shape and blockout is good enough. Here's a quick turnaround of the finished blockout.